Howdy Google Ads fans and welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to talk about an exciting automated bid strategy called Target Outranking Share. What is the objective of Target Outranking Share? Basically, it's to wipe the floor with a certain competitor. Outranking share means I want to get a certain, I want my budget to be spent in a way that puts my ad on the search engine results page above a certain competitor. If there's a specific nagging competitor that seems to be on top of you in your best auctions, this strategy will try to outrank them based on your settings. One effect could be gaining market share by having higher position in the search engine results page. Ignores other business metrics like CPA and return on ad spend, but you could set limits. I'll show you how to do that in a second. So I'm sure you guys know me by now well enough to know that I don't like this strategy too much. Like, we have one competitor that we have to outrank. That sounds like a very personal thing, and that's really the only reason why you'd use an automated bidding strategy like this. Unless, again, you could tie this to a specific end result where you're generating more revenue. So if you know, or if you suspect that if I could bid really aggressively and my competitor doesn't have the budget, and I know that this other company doesn't have the budget to compete with me at this level, and I'm willing to invest in taking market share away from them, I'm willing to invest, drive up the price of the auction, drive up the costs of clicks, so he bids more conservatively over time, and I could predict that this will earn me more money, then it might be worth it. It's not a long-term solution, it's not a long-term strategy, but it might be worth doing. But that's the basic objective of a bidding strategy like this. How does a bidding strategy like this actually work in the real world? Outranking is when your ad is shown above another ad, like we just said. You tell Google which domain you want to outrank, how often, and Google raises and lowers your bids to meet that target. So for example, you could choose what outranking share percentage you want. So again, this is pretty arbitrary and it's really, really hard to figure out some specific business metric in terms of revenue that you could tie to it. But say you want to be above your competitor, I don't know, like, say that you're Sleepy's and you're competing with Macy's Home, right? So you want to be beating Macy's Home in 80 out of 100 searches. You want to be above them. So you're targeting an 80% outranking share. I want to outrank them 80% of the time where we're sharing an ad in this auction. Or I could do 90% or 10% or 100%. But exactly how you figure out that number, I really don't know. Like, I haven't figured out. I'm decent when it comes to these types of formulas, but something concrete to figure out what outranking share you want or the right one to choose, because this whole strategy is a little bit objective. This whole strategy is a little bit of this emotional thing. So it's hard to know. Go with your gut. Go with 100%. If you're doing it, I don't know, that's how I feel. If you're doing it, do it all the way. If you want to outrank a competitor, try to outrank him 100% of the time. Like, don't wuss out with your outranking share bidding strategy. If you're going to bury somebody, bury the competitor in the ads auction. And by all means, you have every right to do that. This is a fair, open, economic playing field. If you want to drive up the price of the auction, you want to bid aggressively, you want to outrank a competitor, go for it. Do it 100%. But don't forget, they could also have the same exact strategy, which reminds me of a funny story. We actually had a client, and this was way back in the day. We had two separate account teams managing two separate competing companies, sort of both owned by the same parent company, which was our client. Whatever, it was a little complicated. And both teams didn't realize that we were managing, for the sake of keeping things separate, we wanted to really keep, we didn't really have any cross conversation or cross strategic discussion about those two accounts. So both teams decided to run target outranking share bidding strategies against each of the competitors, both owned by our client. And as you could imagine, it ended up competing, and the clicks became 5 times the cost of what the click should have been, because both accounts that we were managing were competing each other with the same exact bidding strategy. And that's the type of thing that could happen when you mess around with target outranking share and you don't set a limit, right? So that was a big mistake we made. Anyway, you could control a max CPC bid limit. It could take up to a week to see results with this sort of bidding strategy. So if you're going to do it, give it a little bit of time. Don't be checking it every hour. If your competitor is also trying to outrank you, things can get messy and expensive, like we just spoke about. Applies to all keywords, not just to auctions that your benchmark domain is in. Okay? It applies to all auctions, not just to auctions that your target benchmark competitor domain is in, which is interesting. You're going to be applying a keyword level bid strategy or a campaign level bid strategy, and it could drive up the costs of your keyword even when that competitor is not in that auction with you. So keep that in mind as well. Scenario of when this might be applicable. Let's say Poppin, our template company, notice a new competitor entering the market for furniture, similar products to what they sell. Poppin may want to invest in preventing this competitor from gaining market share, even if it cuts into profits by leading to more expensive CPCs, right? If I do a target outrank share, my costs per click will go up and I'll have less profit from my campaigns. But if I'm an established company and I'm noticing a little guy coming in and trying to play on my turf, I might, and it's within my right to do that, I believe. I think it's totally fair to invest as long as I'm playing fairly, as long as I'm not doing anything underhanded, as long as every other competitor has all the same techniques available to them, which they do, they might want to go ahead and run a target outrank share against the competitor. So for this furniture campaign, they may use target outranking strategy as their bidding strategy, using that competitor as the benchmark domain. So that's a scenario where target outrank share might work. So let me just show you quickly how target outrank share looks inside a live Google account. So here we are back in Google Ads in an actual live account. I've selected target outrank share as my bidding strategy, just to show you what this might look like. If I have portfolio strategies, which are basically bidding templates, bidding strategy templates set up, then I could use an existing portfolio strategy, or you just select create a new portfolio strategy, and I choose the domain name to outrank. So let's say in this case, let's say for example, it's sleepies.com, and my target to outrank, remember we said you could choose 80%, 70%, but we're going to double down on our efforts and choose 100%, and I could choose a maximum bid limit, the most I want to pay for a click. So let's say that's $17. If I don't want to ever pay more, then I would name this. In order to save this strategy, when it comes to certain types of bidding strategies, you actually have to save it as what Google calls a portfolio bidding strategy. I would save it, something like Sleepies. I would do 100% for my target outrank share, and $17, which indicates my bid limit. That would be the name of my strategy or something like that, okay? But I don't want to actually implement this, so I'm going to click cancel and go back to my campaign settings for this account. That is target outrank share. In the next lecture, we'll quickly talk about maximize clicks, and I look forward to seeing you guys very soon in the very next lecture.